Here we go.
You really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Hey, motherfucker. What you like to do?
Oh, I don't know. Play chess. Screw.
Well, let's play chess.
They give off to Jonathan Taylor. Jump cutting his way close to the goal line. He's in there. Touchdown. I-N-D-Y. Jonathan Taylor.
Wheeler finds Quan from the logo.
Here's Halliburton into the front court. Mishandled it, but gets a shot. Hits it. Hits it.
John, I have never been better to be on the air with you here in Indianapolis, a place where so many of my dreams have come true.
The Ride with JMV on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
For a second consecutive day, JMV gets a day off. We have reached that time of the NBA season, especially courtesy of the Indiana Pacers win last night, where you can take a day or two off. My assumption is John is taking yesterday and a day off and is back in the air chair for the takeover tomorrow night on B1057, and then he makes his triumphant return to this seat on Monday afternoon. My name is Greg Rakestraw. Hello, how are you? You had Brian Noe as your substitute teacher yesterday. You get me to be that guy today. The way that you can interact with me, the phone line is the same, 317-239-1070. Old school email, not the same, but available because I still have a handle here. Greg at 1070thefan.com. And yes, that email works, I think, even though we've not been on the 1070 frequency now for quite some time. And also available to you would be via Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it these days. At Greg Rakestraw is how you can interact with me socially. Your interaction is, I'm not sure, required. It is certainly requested on the program today. Here is the guest list that we will have, and there may be one more that gets added to it during the course of the 4 o'clock hour. If I were a full-time talk show host, I'm sure I would have led the show with a hello, friends, because it's Masters weekend, and that's what you do. You know, very fitting that, Easter rolls around next weekend, because being a Masters fan is kind of like being a C&E Christian, for those of you that are in the know. Those of you that go to church on just Christmas or Easter weekend. There is a very similar group that are like that in terms of being golf fans. Maybe it's 2, 3, maybe 4 weekends a year. If you do more than that, you are legitimately a golf fan. But if you're just a fan of the Masters and or the U.S. Open, and then like the British Open when they're playing at St. Andrews, that is all perfectly fine. So in the interest of kind of letting you behind the curtain here, like I'm not Kevin Bowen in terms of golf knowledge. Very clearly I am not Kevin Bowen in terms of golf game. I got it to like where I was a mid-'80s golfer about 20 years ago. Mid-'80s is a bad day for KB. He is he's unquestionably the ringer of this group from a golfing perspective. But I tend to lock in to watching the Masters, maybe because I just have the time. I've got more casual time. Like, I have no sporting events to cover tonight. I'm not covering anything tomorrow. This might be like one of one weekends of the year where I have no events on a Friday or a Saturday combined. So, of course, to get my fix, I'm here talking with you on the radio airwaves, on the YouTube, etc., on the show today. But I literally have the Masters broadcast pulled up on the computer, and I have the Masters leaderboard right next to it. This will not be 3 hours of golf conversation, but it's something that I'll go back to throughout the course of the show. And it is something that we have a very good guest at our fingertips that I'm pretty sure makes the rounds of like all the shows in and around every golf major, because Google Gobble, he's one of us and lives here in Indianapolis from Sirius PGA Tour Radio, Sirius XM PGA Tour Radio. The pride of both North Central and Butler, Will Hask will join us. In fact, he will do so in the next segment of the show. Like I said, we're working on a guest for the 4 o'clock hour. I'll save that until that guest is confirmed. If I have to do any sort of heavy lifting on the program, Perhaps it's going to be not in this hour, but in the 4 o'clock hour of the show, because it might be a whole lot of me. 5 o'clock hour, I got two great guests, man. Life is going to be easy. Pacers conversation, which we'll get to kind of setting up last night's game and what it means for tonight's game and Sunday's finale, coming up in a matter of moments. But Scott Agnes of Fieldhouse Files will join us to start the 5 o'clock hour. And the other big sporting event of note along the West Coast and here, coming up on Sunday, will be the second biggest event of the IndyCar schedule, and that would be the Long Beach Grand Prix. And you can hear that on our sister station, WIBC, with coverage beginning at 4 o'clock. Why on our sister station? Well, because we do have the Pacers' regular season finale on Sunday afternoon. And to ask Eduardo Blanco to shorten his postgame show would just be wrong in the 82nd installment of said show for the season. So you can hear Long Beach Grand Prix over on WIBC at 4 o'clock on Sunday. One of the voices that you hear as part of it, Nick Yeoman, will be joining us coming up at 5:30. Other topics, and again, there's certain things that I'm always latched into this time of year, like being the Indy 11 guy. Soccer Saturday is going to be a banger, by the way, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. on these same radio airwaves on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan, obviously, we're now 2 weeks removed from the high school boys basketball state championships. It is all-star season for me. There is a chance that I am on the broadcast of like 8 different days of all-star basketball, starting from this Sunday through Saturday, June 7th, when Indiana and Kentucky wrap up their week at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. You may have not known there were that many days available of all-star basketball. Yes, there are. I'm trying to broadcast as many of those things as possible through the day job. Let me lift this up for those of you, since I can see the camera feed behind it on ISC Sports Network. The first of those will be on Sunday afternoon in Columbus. Well, I'll have the at least first half of the HBCA All-Star Game, which is the Southern Indiana All-Star Game. And as I put this on Facebook and Twitter yesterday and got a significant series of raised eyebrow surprises, I had never been in the Stearman Gym, the famous gym in Columbus at Columbus North High School, until a day ago. And I have never broadcast a game from there, and I will check that box off the list coming up on Sunday. So those topics are always in play. And obviously there is Colts news that happened today. I wouldn't say earth-shattering news, not a big surprise. Some of you might have a knee-jerk reaction that that's all they are going to do at that position, and the answer is no. But the Colts, there's a little Southern Indiana for you, Colts. The Colts did bring back Mo Alley-Cox for a 9th year. They have brought back Mo Alley-Cox. Not bad for a guy that isn't probably a primary weapon in terms of a pass catcher. Not bad for a guy that did not play a single down of college football, but clearly is one of the veteran leaders in that locker room, and where he is elite is as a run blocker. So again, don't have a knee-jerk reaction. The Colts still have a desperate need in which they need to go out and draft a tight end in the first round. I hope it's Tyler Warren. He may not be available at 14, and I'm not sure the Colts would have a desire to bump up as high as they might need to take him. There is talk that the Jets might be taking him at 8. Colts and Jets obviously have done a whole lot of deals together over the years, but there's other options available at 14. Again, my hope it's Tyler Warren, but we'll figure that out. That's the Colts news of today, that Mo Alley-Cox is back. Obviously, the Colts news of yesterday is that Matt Gay is not coming back. And I don't think that comes as a big surprise in terms of the news of itself. It is a big surprise in terms of the timing of it, just because, again, you thought that might be a post-June 1st cut to allow for a little more salary cap flexibility for that to happen. I also don't think that automatically means that Spencer Schrader is going to be the kicker of this football team. I think he could be involved in a battle, and I do think you could see a third-day draft pick used on a kicker for the Colts. and that while it would certainly be, in terms of attention, a secondary battle, not a battle in the secondary, but everything is going to be behind the quarterback position in terms of what you care about when you go to Grand Park in late July and throughout the month of August. There could be a kicking competition. And by the way, of note, you know what we did not hardly see any of last year when we were at training camp? Remember them kicking a lot of field goals at training camp last year? I don't either. Maybe we see some of that coming up in August. But that news broke yesterday, so we can talk about that. And obviously now we are 13 days away from the draft. And this is not going to be in April where our focus is so heavy on the draft because, again, the Colts are not to a position yet where they're thinking about taking a quarterback in the first round. Could I see the Colts taking a quarterback as high as maybe round 3? Possible. I don't think round 2. Maybe a sneaky guy in round 3. Maybe early on day number 3. But normally your interest tends to be in terms of talking about this not just sporadically, but ad nauseum on shows like this would be if the Colts have a top 10 pick, and obviously what happened 3 years ago when the Colts had the number 4 pick in the draft, ended up taking the number 3 quarterback in terms of available selections in Anthony Richardson. So it's not that sort of draft focus, but it will start to become more and more of the conversation. But as I promised, let's talk a little Indiana Pacers, shall we? Now, again, there's not much that you should take from last night's victory other than the result. All right? It's simply the way that things unfolded. The Cavaliers got to a point where they could sit everybody in last night's game. And the Pacers, knowing they're still having something to play for, and that is still the case heading into tonight because the New York Knicks are catchable. I can do the math. The Pacers are 1 back with 2 left to play. They still have something to play for. Now, could they sit players tonight because it's simply the second night of a back-to-back? Perhaps they might. Perhaps they might say, you know what, 4 is good enough for us. Whomever we get of the Bucks or Pistons, you feel good about your opportunities. So maybe playing for the 3 seed isn't exactly a huge motivating factor for the Pacers. They might be on hashtag team shut it down for this evening's game and maybe even for Sunday's game as well. In baseball, the saying has always been, like, momentum is what the next day starting pitcher would be. Basketball, I do feel, is a bit of a momentum game. But you know what breaks your momentum? Not having to play a game for at least 6 days, maybe 7. And that's where anybody seeded 1 through 6 in the East or the West are at. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. You have a chance to rest up. You have a chance to get healthy. But in other words, you can tell me, listen, the Pacers are not going to play their starting 5 each of the next 2 days. And I would kind of give you a Pete Davidson as Chad. Okay, along with that. I wouldn't spend much time thinking about it because it's not like whatever happens these next 2 games against the Magic tonight, which you can hear right here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan, or coming up with the game against the Cavaliers on Sunday. Those things aren't going to affect. They can affect the seeding potentially, but not kind of overall how we feel about this team. And this is a team, and you could say this about a lot of NBA teams. You get to the last 10, 15 games of the season. But let's face it, the Pacers have generally played to the level of their competition over the course of the last 2 or 3 weeks. The notable exception was the night they hung 160 on the hapless Washington Wizards. You know, the team they trailed by like 13 points at one point in time before they finally put them away and beat them on Tuesday night. You know, that game a couple of weeks ago where they literally took shot clock violations with like 2 minutes left to go in the game. And for those of you like me, lucky enough to kind of be listening when Mark Boyle was given the radio play-by-play that night, when Mark, who's been doing this job since the late 80s for this franchise, when he goes, I've never seen anything like that. I just tell you that something unique was happening. But since that time, I was lucky enough to get to go to watch the Jazz game on Friday. Very much the Pacers played to the level of competition, but they found a way to get the job done. Same thing against the Wizards on Tuesday. Same thing against the JV Cavaliers last night. They have played to the level of their competition. But you know what they also did on Sunday? They played to the level of their competition, and that was a good thing because they beat the Denver Nuggets and got them to fire their coach that won a championship 2 years ago. They won a game on the road, and it's never easy to win at altitude, but especially never easy to win when perhaps the best player on the planet is on the other team and scored more than 40 points. And so meathead take would say, this team's got to be playing better going to the postseason. No. The momentum completely stops. You have a chance to kind of reset mentally and physically before you get to the next series when you're playing either next Saturday or next Sunday. But if you're a team that is playing your level of competition, and frankly, starting with the game against the Magic, you have no more games left against non-playoff competition. If you play the level of your competition, that's going to be pretty good. So I like where this team is at. And you kind of, after 80 games, you are what you are. Now, in terms of what's going to make this a good postseason, and feel free to chime in on this at 317-239-1070 or on social media at Greg Rakestraw. As I always tell people, if you know the bat phone, you can always text that one as well. I'm not Jake. I don't give up my cell phone on the air. I've come close before accidentally, but I try to, have some sort of barrier between work and personal life. But if you know it, go ahead. Don't call it. I can't answer them. I'm kind of doing live radio. But text, and we'll figure out a way to chat it up. And see, as I say that, somebody calls me immediately. See, Joe, don't call me. I'm on the air right now. Thanks, Joe. 317-239-1070 at Greg Rakestraw on Twitter. But in terms of what's going to make this a good postseason run for the Pacers, it's going to be hard to match what they did a year ago. Fate helped the Indiana Pacers last year. It does not take away from what they accomplished in terms of making the Eastern Conference Finals. But they got a Bucks team that wasn't at full strength. They got a Knicks team that was beaten up. What I'm trying to grease the wheels and prepare you for is I'm not sure if the Pacers can make the Eastern Conference Finals again. I am very much a proponent of play to your seed. That this has been a step up because, and I'm sure you have heard this stat between last night at 9:30 and today. If you listen to this radio station a lot, my guess is you've heard this before. But this is the first time in 11 years the Pacers will have home court advantage in a playoff series. Marinate on that a little bit. There hasn't been like this long period of walking through NBA Siberia. There's been a bad season or two. But first time in 11 years that they have been a top 4 seed. That's a step forward. This team kind of made quantum leaps each of the last 2 or 3 years. But now that progress is going to be a little bit more measured. I don't know if they can match what they did last year. And it's not a Pacers problem. I like the way this team is constructed. There's some obvious, I wouldn't say lots of question marks. It's more of question mark, singular, as in what do you do financially with Miles Turner? What do you do with the backup center position? Clearly, you need to find a way to play Jarris Walker more because when he has gotten minutes, he has done good things. There's probably one too many guys in the rotation. It also kind of helps you answer the Miles Turner question because not only you're at the salary cap, you're about to get to the luxury tax apron if you're the Pacers. So you got to figure out what that's going to look like going forward. But you worry about that at the end of May or at some point in time in June. I'm sure that Kevin Pritchard, Chad Buchanan, et cetera, are worried about that now, but everybody else's focus can kind of be on, winning a playoff series and defending your seed and defending home court. But I think the Cavaliers, while they have not been as crisp lately because they haven't needed to be, they're 63-17. I don't think I need to explain to you how good the Boston Celtics are with what they have accomplished as of late. And if you ask me, and again, you don't say this part out loud if you're Rick Carlisle and company, but you think about it, you strategize about it. If you ask me who I would rather see in the second round, I'd rather see the Cavaliers and the Celtics. I know the Cavaliers are talented. I also know the Cavaliers have not had the playoff pedigree that the Boston Celtics have had with this group. Now, Cleveland could be of that ilk, and it could be an all-youth NBA final, and this would make those that believe in the philosophy of nothing but big markets. Again, if it's not the Indiana Pacers playing in the NBA Finals, you are damn skippy. I am rooting for Cleveland and Oklahoma City. Give me mid-market madness in the middle of the country, and the coastal elites can go do something else. Can I say coastal elites in this studio? Do I have to be across the hall to say coastal elites? Does that actually... Let me not say that again, but you get the point that I am trying to make. Again, I think the Pacers have had a really good year. And for as bad, I wouldn't say bad, but below what was expected the first 25 games of the year, and yes, injuries played a factor in that, no doubt about it. But for you to go from 10-15 to 49-31, again, I'll do the math quickly for you, folks. In the last 55 games, the Pacers are 39-16. It's pretty doggone good. I don't know if this team can beat the Cavs in 7 games. I don't know if they can beat the Celtics in 7 games. But I think the moves that they made to bring back as many of those core pieces like Obi Toppin, like Aaron Nesmith, like TJ McConnell from a season ago. And obviously, before that, you extend Tyrese Halliburton long-term. In the offseason, you extend Pascal Siakam long-term. All of those things I thought were good, even if I'm not sure as to how you're constructed if you can beat Cleveland and Boston. I understand that those things do not bother me. So to me, it sounds like regression, but I don't think it is. If the Pacers can simply win their opening round series and defend their home seed, I still think that's progress, even if your season ends earlier than it did last year. Again, last year, things just kind of tumbled into place for you. It may not do that in this month of May, but I still feel good about where the Indiana Pacers are. And frankly, that has nothing to do with how tonight's game goes or how Sunday's game goes against the Cavaliers. So if you want to talk Pacers, give me a segment or two. Again, hit me up on Twitter, @GregRakestraw, if you want to be a part of the conversation. But we'll get to your phone call, say about 3:45, 3:50, in terms of the Indiana Pacers, and plenty of time later in the show. And Scott Agnes of Fieldhouse Files will join us in the 5 o'clock hour. But in the next segment, let's talk a little Masters, shall we? And the leaderboard is juicy. Justin Rose maintained the lead, but didn't get that far in front of the field, where it's still interesting. There is nobody who is as must-see golf, and I'll explain why I feel this way, than Bryson DeChambeau. He's 1 shot off the lead. For those of you that wrote the Masters obit of Rory McIlroy a day ago, well, rumors of his demise apparently have been greatly exaggerated. After having doubles on 2 of his last 4 holes yesterday, he went out and shot a 66. He's in 3rd. I don't know who the McCarty is that's in 5th. I assume it's not either Walter McCarty or former A's pitcher Steve McCatty. I'll look who that person up is. But Scotty Scheffler's on the course. He's got 11 holes to play. He's at 5 under. Juicy! I like it. We'll talk Masters. Will Hask of SiriusXM PGA Tour Radio next. Substitute Teacher Friday. Greg Rakestraw in for JMV. And I got free tickets, because what would John's show be without free tickets, right? Back in a moment. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Yeah, and the beat goes on.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
It is Masters Friday. I think there were some weather concerns at one point in time for today. Doesn't appear to be a problem right now. And the weather forecast for the weekend looks absolutely glorious. For the most part here, and after last weekend, Lord knows we deserve it. But secondarily, in other words, you can make your viewing plans accordingly. Get the honey-do list done early in the day each of the next 2 days. Of course, the man that, well, might be the most knowledgeable golf broadcaster we have in Central Indiana because he lives here, as well as being on Sirius XM PGA Tour Radio. Talented in a variety of ways. It is Will Hask that joins us now on the Andy Moore Automotive Group Hotline. Happy Masters Week, my friend. How you doing?
Oh, it's like an early Christmas for us golf fans. Although, if we're being truly honest, there's been enough really good golf tournaments before now. But again, this is sort of the week, Greg, where I guess I get dusted off here in Central Indiana, and we talk about golf, as many people will be watching their first golf tournament of 2025 this weekend.
And then we bring you back for the U.S. Open, depending on where the British Open is, to bring you back for that. Then after that,
we get PGAs in May now. We get the PGA sandwiched in there. So,
but you got to remember,
less than a month
here that means qualifying weekend.
That's true. So really hard to compete against the month of May.
Unless like the 50-year-old guy wins it again, then we're going to talk about the PGA Championship when that is the case. So as I am talking to you, Bryson DeChambeau just rolls one in. So he finishes his round with a 68. He goes 3 under, 7 under. Even though he is not the leader and one shot back, in my mind, like he is the golfer that, because of the way he swings, because of playing for the other tour, because of how jacked he is, like he to me is the golfer that, as a casual fan, draws me in more than anybody else right now in the game. Just your thoughts on that statement.
Yeah, it's really crazy, sort of the evolution and I guess the reclamation that is Bryson DeChambeau. I mean, if you look at the guys that left the PGA Tour and went to LIV, it's been a really, really bad couple of days for LIV golfers. I mean, John Rahm's a few holes behind him trying to avoid missing the cut, and everybody else is kind of around that cut number and not really a factor. And then here's Bryson, who won the U.S. Open last year. And, you know, there's been a lot of pieces about sort of finding himself and being uncomfortable in his own skin and sort of the perception. He was sort of, I guess you could say, kind of the heel in golf on the PGA Tour until he left for LIV. And then a combination of him just sort of embracing who he was, and also really embracing a younger demographic and becoming a really popular YouTuber. I mean, he's got over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, doing lots of videos with celebrities in the sports world and beyond. And so he's just kind of embraced this sort of fan-friendly aspect of him, and his golf has gotten really good again. That's the other thing too, Greg, is that when he left the PGA Tour for LIV, not only was he uncomfortable in his own skin, he wasn't playing his best golf either in 2021 and 2022. So it's been a really cool sort of turnaround for him. He's always been a great player. He's always been quirky and thinks a lot and tinkers and everything. But yeah, I guess he's become easy to root for. I got to know him when he was an amateur. I actually sort of liked Bryson before. I haven't had a chance to interact with him much since he's become probably infinitely more famous than he was then. But it's yeah, I would say right now, if you had to list golfers that move the needle non-Tiger Woods division, it's not a really long list, and he's definitely on it. And it's probably 3 or 4 guys, honestly, when we're talking about non-Tiger, that truly drive casual people to the TV. And Bryson DeChambeau is one of them, and he's going to be a factor this weekend.
And 3 of those guys are lined up right behind the guy that's leading, and I promise I'm going to get to him in a matter of moments. But since I went to the second-place golfer, let's go to the third-place golfer. Rory McIlroy's not out of this yet, is he?
No. I didn't think he was out of it after yesterday. And let's hope, if you're rooting for Rory McIlroy and winning a career Grand Slam, that the heartbreak moment of the week that we've sort of become accustomed to seeing with him in majors over the last 7 or 8 years happened yesterday. Those doubles at 15 and 17 were super deflating. I mean, I think it was very easy to write him off and out of this tournament and just sign for a 6 under par 66 bogey free today. And with Justin Rose, not really extending at the top, Rory's now right in the mix. So if you say he's gotten his bad holes out of him yesterday going into a weekend, and you mentioned the weather, it's going to be perfect down in Augusta this weekend. So it's going to be great scoring. Rory's back in this. Very easy to say he's been playing better golf than anybody in the world. over the course of 2025. So this is the day that we expected to see from Rory. And honestly, if we got I'm sure we're going to get to Scotty Scheffler here in a second, but if we got a Rory McIlroy, Bryson DeChambeau final twosome on Sunday, holy cow, sign me up for the ratings report from Nielsen on Monday.
I may be rooting for a rain delay of some kind, so they have to go threes, and you throw DeChambeau, McIlroy, and Scheffler together. We can end it. Roll credits if that is the case right there. I'm going to get to Scotty in a moment, but back to Rory. And frankly, this answer – you could take 15 minutes with if you wanted to, because as you've said, he has been in he's won so many other tournaments. He's been in contention at majors. It has been a decade since he won a major. Why is that the case?
So many one, it's hard.
True.
I don't think we give enough credit to how many majors he's won. When you look at how many other superstar players of the last 20 years have won one or two or three of these. Winning the number of majors that he has is spectacular in its own right, and he's been winning really hard golf tournaments other places. Now, if we take him at face value for what he has said, he'll talk about, look, I've had a lot of things on my plate. I've focused on winning in other places. I haven't put as much emphasis on the majors as, say, some other people. We know from Tiger Woods' chase of history that he just treated majors differently. Everything around his year was focused on 4 weeks. I'm not saying that Rory wasn't as focused on 4 weeks, but he was focused on other golf tournaments as well, and he's been really successful in them as well. And he has said, starting last year, that he's really ratcheting his schedule, his preparation, his mindset, everything to peak for majors. And it led to a chance for him to win last year. And he had that heartbreak moment at the U.S. Open by missing a couple of short putts late, and Bryson clipped him with that great up and down. So if we believe Rory, it's working in 2024 and 2025, small sample size. Him trying to peak for these tournaments is going well so far. Now can he get it across the line? And this week, a lot of it has been focused on, has he gotten in his way too much? Is it too much thought? Are the questions getting to him? And he had some really honest answers about it. It would affect anybody. Greg, I get nervous trying to close out, a club championship here in town. Just pulling the trigger on the first tee is nerve-wracking. Anybody that questions these guys, just doesn't understand what it takes to pull the trigger sometimes on a difficult golf shot. So Rory is just sort of chalking it up to every single one of those disappointments. You deposit that emotion and you become numb to it. It's scar tissue. You start to ignore it a little bit. Maybe it'll be his weekend. And again, the other part of it, he could play great this weekend and still get beat. That's the thing about golf. Sometimes really, really good golf still gets clipped. There are plenty of players that have finished second major championships because somebody was just out of this world good. Rory was out of this world good today. Let's see if he gets it done this weekend.
Again, Will Hask at Sirius XM PGA Tour Radio. Our guest, Greg Rakestraw, in for JMV. You're listening to 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. As we update the leaderboard, Scotty Scheffler just gave one back on 6. So he is at 5 under. But again, he's got a lot of holes left to play in terms of his round. So I guess let me put it this way. If you put DeChambeau, McIlroy, and Scheffler, and I said, all right, these guys are all playing their best, is Scheffler the best of that trio?
It's not even it's not even close. And let me put that. When we say it's not close, his best is a third of a shot better than the other two.
Okay.
And people driving around right now might be like, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. In professional golf standards, it's
it's a lot.
Gap.
That's right.
It's a huge gap. That's how much better his best golf has been over the last 18 months. If they are all on their absolute A games, and Scotty hasn't been this year. He cut his hand over the holiday break, and he just hasn't had the reps that I think we would have seen like we had last year when he was the overwhelming favorite to win this year. But Scotty Scheffler did something last year that we haven't seen this century by any golfer not named Tiger Woods. That's how good he was playing last year. So, yes, A games right now at the moment, Scotty's better than all of them. Now, you could make the argument that, Rory McIlroy, we've seen some of Rory McIlroy's A game, and prior to Scotty, you'd say Rory's A game was the best A game in the world. So I may be giving Scotty a bit too much credit here. And again, I don't look at him playing this week, Greg, and say this is the unbeatable, unstoppable force that we saw in 2024. But if they're all tied at 10 under par going to the back nine on Sunday, and I've seen enough from him this week, it's Scotty Scheffler has the edge because he's got the X factor, and that is his ball striking is just better than everybody in the world. And it has been over the last 18 months.
We probably should actually talk about the guy that, has now had the opening round lead 5 different times. And, again, didn't have that level around, but he's still atop the leaderboard. Justin Rose has been doing this now for 20 to 25 years. There's a good chance he's got the lead going to Saturday. What are his chances to slip on a green jacket at the end of the day on Sunday?
There's nothing. He's going to be probably as good mentally as anybody at the top of this leaderboard. The question is just, can he get it done? And it's hard to say against a guy who's won so many times around the world. He's a U.S. Open champion 12 years ago, an Olympic gold medalist. I mean, he's done everything in this sport that you would want to do. He's not as good of a player at this very moment as some of the guys that are chasing him. And again, I'm talking fractionally. He's still a top 50 type player in the world of golf right now. And experience matters more at the Masters in Augusta than any major and almost any golf tournament. And his experience is extensive at this place. He lost in a playoff to Sergio. He's finished runner-up here a couple of times. He's not going to go away, but we've seen his best round, Greg. He's not going to be able to best what he did yesterday. We're not going to see that type of golf from Justin Rose again this week. And so the question today was, could he back it up with a round under par? He did that, but he's going to have a lot of company, and he may not be in the lead going into tomorrow. And so can he hit the haymakers that the other guys are going to be firing at him? Because, again, really no wind, perfect conditions. It's going to be point and shoot on this golf course, and the guys that are executing at the top of the sport right now are going to have a field day. So could he win it? Yes. It's going to take something really, really special because the leaderboard is shaping up to be just an absolute epic weekend right now.
I've just mentioned the top four, guys in the leaderboard. Who else after that is at least on your radar to be a difference maker on Saturday or Sunday?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, Shane Lowry is lurking right now. There's a really good story in Matt McCarty. I won't bore the audience with why Matt McCarty is a good story, but that'll be a kind of a fun one tomorrow to see how he handles himself, the lefty who was 12 months ago right now, sort of just a middle-of-the-pack guy in the Korn Ferry Tour. Think of that as the AAA of the PGA Tour. And now here he is 12 months later, and he's going to have a late tee time on Saturday at the Masters. It's been a incredible meteoric rise in the world of golf. He's got some golf to play today, but keep an eye on Jason Day. I don't know if he's got 72 holes of major championship golf in him, but he's completely changed his swing to deal with injuries. He's an easy guy to root for. He's been way more on the golf news for his fashion choices over the last year and a half than necessarily his golf, but he's been sneaky playing some really solid golf. And again, as one of those guys that he shows up trying to win, expecting to win. That's the right mindset to have, but is that really realistic? You just want to play really good golf. And so if he finds himself in the mix, he's not going to back down. And that's what's really difficult about these types of majors is that who's going to be able to stare down a Rory McIlroy, Bryson DeChambeau, or Scotty Scheffler? It's going to be a veteran who's been there before and just isn't afraid to try and take on that challenge. And so of the guys in the top 10 right now, I think Jason Day would fit that bill, but he's just going to the back nine. So in the next 45 minutes, he could rinse two balls, and that's going to look like a really stupid comment for me, but he's lurking right now. And I think Jason Day lurking is always something interesting to keep an eye on. By the way, Bernhard Langer might make the cut, which is something else to keep an eye on.
So he and Fred Couples both are in position to do that, which is just utterly ridiculous given those guys' advanced ages from a golf perspective. Again, Will Hask, our guest, Greg Rakestraw, in it's JMV here on 93.5 and 107.5, the Fan Will's appearance on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. You and I have both had the experience of being at Augusta. You have been down there in a working capacity. And because we see it every year, we feel like we know the place. Mm-hmm. When people ask you about your experience there, what do you tell them that you don't think even translates through the world of 4K HD television? I'm going to see if it matches what I would have to say about it. Go ahead.
Elevation.
Yeah. Yep.
You cannot on TV in a two-dimensional space provide any realistic view of how much slope there is in that place. And I'll tell people this, to me, the most amazing piece of the property isn't even one of the golf holes, but there's kind of a triangle. If you're standing on 18T, which then kind of backs up to 1T and it goes down the hill to 8T and there's 9 green there. And there is a space of just sort of fairway that is the size of like 4 football fields. I mean, it is massive.
I know what you're talking about.
It's just one giant sort of hill. And you think, this would be fun to sled on, let alone sort of walk down. It's perfectly manicured, and it's 3 or 4 stories tall to go from where 18 green is all the way down to where sort of the 8th tee box is. It's just massive in scale, and the hills are incredible. If you ever get a chance to go there as a patron, as they are called at Augusta National every year, make sure you have your best walking shoes on, and I would, maybe a month or two worth of really good quad and hamstring workouts would be very helpful if you're going to put in the mileage.
Because it will wear you out. All right, finally, before we let you go, and fittingly, I'm staring at the television interview of Bryson DeChambeau, and his live attire is not to the size of, say, Sergio Garcia's, but you can't miss the logo on the left lapel of his shirt. And to me, even during Masters weekend, the live versus PGA Tour debate, to me, is still the most fascinating thing in golf. Certainly, it appears we're no closer to the two sides getting back together. But I'm curious, and again, you've got a working relationship with these guys, not necessarily a buddy-buddy relationship with these guys. How do the guys in the live tour and the PGA Tour interact with each other? Because to me, like, the ultimate golf competition now wouldn't be Ryder Cup or President's Cup. Somebody stage me a live versus PGA Tour death match. I'm all in on that. How do these guys kind of interact?
Yeah, I mean, I think Bryson DeChambeau will be on the Ryder Cup team this year for the United States at Bethpage. He's playing too well, and if he wins this week, he can make it on points.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of gotten over a lot of that. The guys that left aren't going to be able to come back together on some of these things that aren't PGA Tour related. To be honest, Greg, I don't think the players even care anymore.
Okay.
I don't think there's animosity at all in the locker room. There are different sort of opinions on what the sport should look like moving forward. But I think if you read the tea leaves, and I will even say this just from behind the scenes, there's buyer's remorse on some of the guys that are on live that wish they were still on the PGA Tour. But it's hard to say no to a giant bag with 9 figures worth of money in it to be able to make the jump. But you're right. They are nowhere close to a resolution. We've had things turned down. Both sides aren't budging on what is really you can't take two tours, merge them, and then expect to have the same size of tours, still operational. And I think that's the delusion that both sides or at least one side is operating on, and sort of bringing negotiations to a halt. It's a different conversation for a different show at a different time. But all the top players in the world right now, whether they're playing on the PGA Tour or live, are rich, fat, and happy. And so that there's really no animosity there. And what's the incentive for them to get back together until one side is truly folding? And that may still come to be, but right now, the side that has unlimited money doesn't have all the eyeballs, and the side that does have the eyeballs, the PGA Tour, has a little bit more time before they would get sort of financially squeezed out. It's just, we're all numb to it now in the space. We're hoping that something gets done, but I mean, we've wasted so much time worrying about it that I think I'm like the players too. It's just like, whatever, on to the next tournament, and we'll see kind of where things go, which is a terrible answer, but that's just kind of the reality we exist in right now.
All right, final question. You still selling books at this point?
It's been a couple of years, but it's always on Amazon. So I'm wondering what the next book is going to be at this point in time. I've had a couple of ideas and I'll be honest with you, the split in the game hurt what I thought was going to be my next book. I won't say what it was going to be, but just sort of the uncertainty of where golf is right now. It's a little bit harder to get access, I think, to people that want to tell stories, because it's just a tough spot. But yes, The Science of Golf, I wrote a few years ago and published. It's an evergreen book. So for the golf fan in your life, go to Amazon or wherever your books are sold, and you can find The Science of Golf.
Thanks, my friend. We'll do it again soon. Take care of yourself.
All right. Take care.
Will Hask, again, on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. You can hear him most weeks. Sirius XM PGA Tour Radio, rechristened this weekend to Masters Radio. Oh, you break. We'll kind of go through the leaderboard and update you, because we do have an updated guest list for the show today as well. We'll tell you more about that when we come back on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. support.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
You know, it has been a few years since my days of, well, not spinning records, I'm not that old, but spinning CDs on X103. But I most certainly was of the Blink-182 generation in terms of, kind of the poppy alternative, circa 98, 99 in their heyday. And, if we're going to play a song from a band that we're giving away tickets for, that's your cue to call in. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4. Caller number 4 gets a pair of tickets to see Blink-182 at Ruoff on September the 18th. Caller number 4 right now at 317-239-1070. You're going to go see Blink-182. We'll have another chance to win Blink-182 tickets later in the program. We'll also have a 4-pack, I believe, of tickets to go watch the Indy Ignite play this weekend at the all-new Fishers Event Center, which is crazy busy this time of year. The Indy Fuel are wrapping up their season. The Fishers Freight are just beginning their season. I think the Ignite go into May, if I know that properly. Because believe it or not, that has been one thing that has not been on my beat just yet. Give it time. I'll get to do their games at some point in time. 317-239-1070 is our telephone number. Hit me up at Greg Rakestraw. A quick check of the leaderboard. Top 3 golfers are all in the house. Justin Rose at 8 under par. Bryson DeChambeau at 7. Rory McIlroy at 6. Kevin Connors is playing the 12th, 6 under par. Scotty Scheffler playing the 9th, 6 under par. McCarty and Lowry in the house at 5. Day and Hatton on the course and yet to play the back 9. Those guys are at 5 as well. And again, I know a fraction of the golf that Will Hask does, which is why we had him on the show to make all of us smarter. But I had the pleasure of going to Augusta for the practice rounds in the days of the old ATA day trip. Get the airport at 6 a.m., get back at 9:30, you take a 7. Most of the planes that land at the Augusta airport are like these little puddle jumpers. We were taking 737 and hauling down to Augusta. And it was a crazy good day. And what he said about elevation is absolutely true. I'm watching the action from 10. Going down 10 is going down a mountain. Coming up 18 is coming back up a mountain. Other thing I would share with you is this. There is not a speck of dirt that is ever out of place at that facility. And imagine one of the great sports venues on earth would be kind of like going down 31 on the south side, or say Meridian on the south side. Like the Waffle House is on the right, and behind this row of trees is Augusta National Golf Club on your left. The souvenir prices, the pimento and cheese prices are remarkably affordable once you give your kidney to get into the building. But once you do, those images that you get from being there will stick in your brain for the rest of your life, because it has been 22 years since I got to go down there. And I can picture every hole and walking them every year that I watch this tournament ever since. Oh, yeah, you break. When we come back, we'll talk a little more Masters. We'll talk with you on the telephone lines because, oh, by the way, we have added a guest during the 4 o'clock hour of the show. That'll be Nate Atkins of the Indianapolis Star. Again, yesterday, Matt Gay released. Today, Mo Alley-Cox re-signed. And we're T-minus 13 days from the first round of the NFL Draft. Nate Atkins joins us at 4:30. Your telephone calls, your tweets when we come back on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I wouldn't say a frequent, but a sometimes request by me on the JMV takeover. The cult of personality playing in the background. Yes, that is CM Punk's entrance song for those of you that are so inclined, if that is your thing. And you know, the wrestling that I watch more than anything else right now is not like Friday Night SmackDown. Even though I'm off, there may be some scrolling to SmackDown tonight. I caught like glimpses of TNA Impact last night. Like, I will flip over just to kind of see what's going on and not like lock in long-term and watch. But one of the handful of shows that I'm like, this is going on the DVR every time that it's on, because it's on for such a limited run. Dark Side of the Ring on Vice. I have watched every episode of that. Tuesday, I had a night off. We watched the Bam Bam Bigelow one at 9 o'clock from 2 years ago, and Big Van Vader at 10 o'clock. The DVR is rolling thick with two things. Bubble Guppies, that's my son's favorite show. I could pretty much quote you every episode from seasons 1 through 4. And secondarily, Dark Side of the Ring. We try not to cross those things up. The audiences there are completely different. 317-239-1070. Not for a ticket giveaway. Congratulations to whatever your name was that won those Blink-182 tickets. We'll do that again coming up during the 5 o'clock hour of the show. Also during the 5 o'clock hour of the show, we will have both Scott Agnes of Fieldhouse Files talk about the Pacers, about the importance or potentially lack thereof of tonight's game. There is importance to it for the Pacers if they feel playing for the number 3 seed is worth their time and effort. They're a game back of the Knicks. The Knicks have 2 games left to play. Here's who the Knicks got. Knicks will be playing Cleveland. Both are on the second night of a back-to-back. So Knicks played last night against the Pistons and lost by 9. Knicks play the Cavaliers tonight. Knicks play the Nets on Sunday, which you would think if the Knicks want to win that game, they would likely win that game, knowing Brooklyn is booking tee times and flights and beach destinations and time at the spa as we think. Of course, the Indiana Pacers, they have the Magic at home this evening. The Magic know they will be in the playoffs. Pacers then play at the Cavaliers on Sunday afternoon at 1. Magic are a win away from locking into the number 7 seed. They know they will be no worse than the number 8 seed. They know they have 2 to win 1. And if they win 1 on Tuesday or Wednesday against the Hawks or the Bulls or the Heat, and forgive me, because this is not the full-time avocation anymore. Like, I have a good idea on like what the Pacers tiebreakers are. But what the 7, 8, 9, 10 tiebreakers are, you got me, man. But the Magic likely will be in the 7-8 game, or they know they'll be in the 7-8 game, whether they're the 7 or the 8. We'll find out over the next couple of days. They've got a little something more to play for maybe than the Pacers do. And again, what Pacers-Cavaliers on Sunday looks like could be an inter-squad scrimmage. That game means absolutely nothing to the Cavaliers, and it could easily be that way for the Indiana Pacers after tonight's game. But when it comes talking about the Pacers, and I'm really not trying to hit the fast-forward button here and to overlook the playoffs, but let's face it, okay, the next true game of importance for the Pacers will be next Saturday or Sunday. And then it will be, all ships at sea going forward, because we'll be all about what the blue and gold are doing. Can they replicate the playoff run of a season ago? But to me, the most pressing thing or interesting thing until those playoff games start for the Pacers, just 7, 8, 9 days from now, is starting to think forward of, all right, whenever the Pacers season is done, there are a lot less question marks than last year. But there is obviously one ginormous question mark in the middle, because I can pretty much tell you who the Pacers have at the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4 for next year. And we don't have that answer on the 5. So here is who's under contract for next year for the Pacers, that are at least in the rotation. Tyrese Halliburton, 4 more years. Pascal Siakam, 3 years. Obi Toppin, 3 more years. Aaron Nesmith, 2 more seasons. TJ McConnell, 3 seasons and potentially a 4th. Benedict Mathurin, 1 more year of his rookie deal and then the qualifying offer. Jarris Walker, 1 more year guaranteed on his rookie deal, then the team option, and then the qualifying offer. For Isaiah Jackson, and obviously after missing all of this season, will the Pacers bring him back? Could they bring him back on a lesser deal? I don't know the legalities of that. I'll bring that up with Scott Agnes during the 5 o'clock hour of the show. Ben Shepherd again, rookie deal, team option, qualifying offer. Andrew Nembhard's extension kicks in next year. Johnny Furphy on a rookie deal. And if the team wanted to bring back Tony Bradley, they could. They have the team option to do so. So not that many names. First of all, in terms of players, Players, the Pacers, try that 3 times fast, no, will be under contract next year. Count it with me, kids. Now, leave your hands on the wheel as you're doing this. I get to use fingers and toes to count here. Halliburton 1, Siakam 2, Toppin 3, Nesmith 4, McConnell 5, Mathurin 6, Walker 7, Shepherd 8, Nembhard 9, Furphy 10. That's pretty much what your rotation's going to look like, with the exception of who your 5 is going to be. You know, we and Lord knows the epicenter talking about Miles Turner has been this radio program. And I don't say this in any way to knock the guy that normally sits in this seat, but there has been no bigger cheerleader for Miles Turner than the host of this show in JMV. And generally, I have agreed with John in terms of his takes on Miles and agree with his importance. And I would like to see him be back with this team. But I'll get to the math coming up in a matter of moments. And let's face it, Thomas Bryant has been great for what the Pacers are paying him. Now, again, NBA salaries, all the professional athlete salaries are to this point where it gets harder by the year for everyday schmoes like you and me to grasp what NBA players make and attach a value to that. Thomas Bryant is making $2.8 million this year. Pretty good money if you can get it. Thomas Bryant, in terms of guys in the roster, I believe is I'm doing this math quickly, nothing like dead air to talk about it, is the 11th highest paid player on the team. You'd say from a rotation standpoint, number 8, number 9, so that kind of tracks. Well, you have to, probably up that number a little bit if you want to keep him here. But obviously, this has been a good fit for him. And he has carved out a really solid NBA career. Like, if you tell me, last year it was, for both the Pacers and the Colts, was hashtag team run it back. The results for the Pacers on that have been better than what it was for the Colts. The Colts clearly have kind of shifted their modus operandi. Even today where we talk about Mo Alley Cox coming back to the team. But for the Pacers, you're already there. But just have to figure out exactly what that is going to be in terms of what that's going to look like for next year. And so here is where the economic reality tends to come into play. So the Indiana Pacers are in the vicinity of $165 million already under, or in terms of the salary cap for next year. Okay? In other words, the Pacers have about $27 million to work with before they would get to the luxury tax next year. And that would include having to bring back Miles Turner. That would include whatever you would carve out for a player like Thomas Bryant or the equivalent of. Do you try to bring back an Isaiah Jackson, whatever the case may be. Miles Turner made in the vicinity of $20 million this year. So you've got the room to do it. But I'm not sure that it is a certainty. Does he view this after 10 years here of, hey, I've maybe got one more chance to strike it big in terms of an NBA contract? Would he find more money going someplace else? And then what do you do if you're the Pacers? And again, that is not to offer any sort of criticism. I agree with every move that was made during the course of the offseason. But that is going to be the conversation from whenever the season ends until NBA draft weekend, which then leads into legal tampering time and free agency. There's not going to be a lot of moves for the Pacers. But that is the obvious free agent move. And now comes the other move. And that is that, again, as I said, you've got 10 players that you know are under contract for next year. And none of those guys play the center position. So let's say you bring back 2 or 3. There's your roster. And you bring back James Johnson to be the highest paid security guard in the history of the NBA. Because he ain't getting off the bench unless somebody's going to start a fight. Then he's the first guy that's getting off the bench. There should be like a special salary cap exemption for like him and Udonis Haslem, etc. Guys that only playing 20 years in the league and really didn't play for like 7 or 8 of them. That's the role that James Johnson plays for this team. But now it comes to the other part of the debate, and that is, what exactly are you going to do when it comes to Jarace Walker? And what piece do you potentially move to get him more playing time? Like, I'm not messing with the starting lineup. I am very pro find a way to bring Miles Turner back. And I know there are some economic realities you got to face in terms of luxury tax, et cetera. And I think Miles is in like the top 4 or 5 of games played in the NBA history of the Indiana Pacers because he's been here for 10 years. So I want him to stay. I want that to be the case. So Tyrese, Pascal, Miles, Nesmith, Nembhard, you're starting 5. I like that group. Obi Toppin off the bench. TJ McConnell off the bench. I like that group. Have you gotten to the point where you have to move Benedict Mathurin to make room for Jarace Walker? Is Ben Shepherd now an insurance policy for you? And you find the space to play both Mathurin and Walker together. So I'm starting this discussion now and knowing that by the time that we get to say Thursday or Friday next week, we will then kind of table that discussion until whenever the Pacers playoffs come to an end. Whether that's at the end of April, whether that's the middle of May, whether that's the end of May, or dare to dream at some point in the middle of June, because the Pacers have made the NBA Finals for the first time in 25 years. I don't see that scenario playing out. Again, I tend to think this team will defend their seed and then toss your lot against the Cavaliers or the Celtics and kind of see what happens from there. So there's less questions for the Pacers, but obviously it's really a 2-part question. Whenever the season comes to an end, it is, how do you get Miles Turner back in the fold? Do you have money left over after that to bring back Thomas Bryant or find an equivalent player to him to be the backup? Do you simply say bon chance to Isaiah Jackson? And unfortunately, that Achilles injury just kind of wrecked his opportunity to grow into being the backup big for this basketball team. And you have probably, stretched the Jarace Walker developmental time as far as you can. Because, again, when he has been given the opportunity as of late, he has done some really good things. And so to get him into the rotation, who has to go? Or maybe the best way to phrase that would be, who would you be willing to move to get Jarris more playing time? Just something to think about with his basketball team. 317-239-1070. That is the telephone number. You can hit me up on Twitter, at Greg Rakestraw. You can email the show to Greg at 1070thefan.com. Again, Pacers and Magic tonight. Hear the coverage right here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Pacers, the number 4 seed, 1 game back of the Knicks. Pacers know they will have home court. Pacers know they will face the Bucks or the Pistons. It is still possible the Pacers could get to 3, but more than likely the Pacers will probably be the number 4 seed. And again, more than likely, it's the latest installment of Pacers versus Bucks, which I think we could all sign up for. Not in terms of ease of victory, but again, there seems to be a little juice there in terms of the rivalry. And I use that word to describe the leaderboard at Augusta. For the last 20 minutes, we've kind of gotten away from it. In fact, I have even turned my back to the screen so I could focus on vamping on all things blue and gold. So here's the quick look of the leaderboard, and it looks, well, very similar to what I said. And again, and part of it is the fact that the top 3 players all in the clubhouse. Justin Rose at 8, Bryson DeChambeau at 7, Rory McIlroy at 6. Scotty Scheffler has made the turn. He is playing 10. He is at 6 under par. Former winner Tyrrell Hatton has made the turn. He is also at 6 under par. McCarty and Lowry, 5 under in the clubhouse. Kevin Connors, Jason Day, both playing the second 9. I learned this yesterday, that of all the do's and don'ts that the broadcasters are supposed to use when it comes to their master's lingo and lexicon, it's not the back 9. It's the second 9. And you want to know how I knew that? I was listening to Masters Radio, which is Sirius XM PGA Tour Radio number 92, rechristened Masters Radio for the course of this weekend. Not that I'm telling you to go anywhere else other than this here radio station you're listening to right now. But I caught the announcer basically trying to correct his mistake. And Lord knows I have been there when something comes out of your mouth, you're like, that's not right. And you try to fix it immediately. And I forget which announcer it was when he goes, on the back 9, he goes, or excuse me, the second 9. I go, oh, that's on the list. I don't think the folks in Augusta can do anything to me, but I will at least kowtow to their wishes on that front and say that it's the second 9 that they are playing currently at Augusta National. Again, Nate Atkins will be joining us coming up in the next segment of the show. We have got Indy Ignite tickets to give to you later in this hour of the program. 5 o'clock hour of the show, more Pacers conversation. Scott Agnes of Fieldhouse Files. And yes, it is Long Beach Grand Prix weekend, the second biggest event on the IndyCar circuit. Nick Yeoman of IndyCar Radio will be joining us at about 5:30 or so. And again, you can hear the Long Beach Grand Prix over in our sister station, 93 WIBC. Coverage beginning at 4 o'clock on Sunday. We'll go ahead and get to our first break a little bit early. Nate Atkins will be following us in a matter of moments. You're listening on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Kids watching at home.
Stay out of trouble.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
There are a couple of guys that are playing in the Masters that heard this song when it was in its heyday. Bernard Langer and Fred Couples. Bernard has had a 7 on the 12th. He is right on the cut line. Let's check in on Freddie Couples. Freddie is at 1 over. He is playing the 14th. Cut line currently is at +2 for all of you that are following along. Let's go to the Twitters, shall we? Nate Atkins coming up in just a matter of moments. From Ryan. You know the reason the old Krusty Cranks at Augusta let him say back 9? They say it too similar to someone's backside and it's inappropriate? Like, you have to say page set of fans, but fanatically associated with it. Listen, when you run Augusta National Golf Club and you've got one of the premier sporting events on the planet, and it's one of the few things like all of us can agree on these days, it's like just totally awesome. You can get away with your own kind of verbiage there. So I would say they can do that because they can. I'm not sure I've got a better explanation than that. From Royce, Thomas Bryant has been a good backup center for the Pacers, not a frontline stretch 5 in this league. Pacers GM must figure out how to make Miles Turner a career Pacer when he's out of the lineup. We're a different team. And again, you can pay Miles more, and this comes now to the ownership of saying, hey, are you willing to dip into the luxury tax? And it's part of it is going to be how much, if you're Miles, do you feel you need for what is likely going to be your last significant contract in the NBA? Part of it might be, does Miles take anything of a hometown discount after 10 years with the team? Now, I said that Miles had reached the top 5 in terms of career games played as an NBA Pacer, not counting the ABA days, but as an NBA Pacer, he's not there yet, but he's close. So he has played 641 games as a Pacer. He is currently 6th. Here's the top 5. Reggie Miller, and again, you'll talk about untouchable records. His record of 1,389 games played with this team is not getting broken. Period. End of sentence. Number 2, Rick Smits. Number 3, Vern Fleming. Number 4, Jeff Foster. Number 5, I know where you live, Dale Davis. That's the group. And Miles is 30 games back of joining the top 5 if he plays more games with this team than does Dale Davis. 317-239-1070. One more tweet to get to from Adam. I'd rather continue to see Jarris and Matherin develop here than see them go elsewhere and turn into all-stars. You're already getting the best versions of Obi and TJ, in my opinion. Future is much brighter with a home ground lottery picks. It's a couple of different, frankly, conversations to have. You know, for Miles, it is the dollars available and do you dip into the luxury tax to keep him if you're the Pacers. For Walker, it's more opportunity. And it's there's only X amount of minutes to go around. And so do you have to move someone to get Walker more minutes? Those are the conversations you have during the course of the offseason. Keep those tweets coming at Greg Rakestraw. But let's shift the focus, shall we? Because, yes, Pacers playoff basketball is now 8-9 days away. The NBA draft is 13 days away, even though the last couple of days the focus has been on the current roster and not the future one. Nate Atkins, of course, he and Joel A. Erickson do a great job tag teaming all things Colts coverage for the Indianapolis Star, joins us now on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Nate, thank you for the time on short notice. How you doing today?
Doing well, Greg. This is sort of the calm before the storm, right? Right before we get into the days heading into the draft, and then everyone loses their mind.
Well, these aren't aftershocks. These are pre-tremors then. And let's get to the news of today. Then we'll get to yesterday's news. Mo Alley Cox coming back should not be a surprise. Again, is he your primary target at tight end? No. but is he a heck of a run blocker? Yes. So your thoughts of that bit of information breaking free today?
Yeah, I think the only question there was sort of when this would go down, and whether Mo would get maybe a little bit of a bigger offer from somewhere else. I think that's the only reason that it happened now instead of earlier in the spring, is he at least wanted to kind of look around and test the market a little bit, just because he's getting into his 30s, and this is now year number 9 with the Colts coming back here. But it's a familiar landing spot for him. Of course, he's only spent his career with one team so far, and they have a pretty sure role for him as that blocking tight end, the leader of the room. I mean, Mo he's a tremendous person to have in a locker room, and really for an offense that has trended younger and younger ever since they drafted Anthony Richardson. And they're just young in a lot of spots, getting younger along the offensive line after some departures too. So for a run game to really be what they want it to be, they need the blocking tight end. Every good team tends to have one of those kind of veteran, physically mature, smart, experienced, all that kind of stuff, things that you don't want to put on a rookie right away. So I don't think it impacts anything else about their plans to go get one. I think they'll be just as aggressive as they were always going to be in the first round, is when they love to get a tight end, whether that's Tyler Warren out of Penn State or Colson Loveland out of Michigan, are sort of the 2 first-round names. Maybe it ends up happening on day 2 if they can't get one of those guys. There's a couple options on the trade market, like Dallas Goedert from the Eagles and Michael Mayer from the Raiders. So there's several different options out there, but the point is the Colts need that number 1 option, certainly a receiving type option, because that's not so much Mo Alley-Cox's game. He has not broken more than 200 yards since 2021, so he's really settled into a blocking role, and sometimes he'll be there, in the red zone when they run play action or they do a trick play. He tends to be the guy that can be in the spot for that, but he's not really a player that they draw up a lot of routes for. They know they need that still. It's been a big void for them, so they're still going to get that somewhere closer to the draft. But this just gets them in a place where they can keep more of their run game going, and that's obviously going to be a big part of what they do next year.
No, he needs to be left tackle or right tackle, for most of the time that he is out there. We'll get to the tight ends in the draft in a matter of a moment, but now let's rewind a day. And the way that I think most of us have couched this in the last 24 hours is the news of Matt Gay not being the kicker for the Colts next year is not stunning. The timing of it is the part that is eyebrow-raising. Why did the Colts make that move yesterday instead of either earlier or, say, later in the summer?
Yeah, timing-wise, I'm not entirely 100% on that yet, because they decided the way they did it to make it a pre-June 1st cut, which means that plays into how much salary cap they want to eat this year versus next year. If they had designated for after June 1st, they could have pushed more into next year. So it's not a move that they were making to necessarily clear cap space for anything else that's imminent right now. I think it just became a sort of individual evaluation. It might have to do with just thinking more about his health and getting an update on his health, because that's really where things turned for Matt Gay. You think about when they signed him 2 years ago, largest free agent contract any kicker's ever signed, and he came right in and he set the world on fire. He made 16 of his first 18 and stole a game for them in Baltimore by setting a record for the number of 50-yard kicks. And then late in that season, he hurt his hip, decided to play through it, struggled through it, ended up having to get hernia surgery somewhat connected to that the next preseason. And we got on track from within 40 yards last year, didn't miss any of those. He just wasn't the same distance kicker at all anymore, even inside of a dome where the settings were pretty nice for that. And so just financially, it didn't make sense to keep paying a kicker that kind of rate, almost $7 million, if he wasn't going to be a difference maker. I know they clearly like Spencer Schrader. That's why they signed him and brought him back like 12 different times already. But they wanted to give him a little bit more of a leash. And so I'm not entirely sure on the timing of it, but I'm pretty sure that the release itself is just built on that the guy that they signed, that version, health-wise for him, what he was 2 years ago, is not the same bankable asset as it is this year. And so they're gonna try for someone who has a little bit healthier, younger, all that kind of stuff in Spencer Schrader, and then maybe just allocate that money somewhere else.
I was going to say, is this Schrader's job, or do you think we have a camp kicking battle on our hands? And I've even thought, Nate, that it's possible they would spend a third-day draft pick on a kicker. I don't think that's ridiculous just because, again, there's not that many glaring needs. We got questions, but not exactly glaring needs in terms of positions. Is it Spencer's job? Is there going to be a battle to be won for that position as well?
Yeah, I think the prudent move will be to have some kind of competition for Spencer Schrader to go out and win, because he hasn't done that yet in the NFL. He's only filled in. Last year he was with the Jets and kicked 5 field goals as an injury replacement, but it's just not much of a track record to go out and bank on. And, they've gotten in trouble when they have not had the position solidified. A couple of years ago, just one game into a season, having to release Rodrigo Blankenship. So I think they need to have a true kind of competition that maybe Schrader he's likely going to be the front runner for, but they're going to, they talk competition across the roster. I think that only makes sense to apply to what's now the least proven position of any of them at this kicker spot. And I wouldn't be shocked if they did look at the draft for a kicker. They haven't done that under Chris Ballard. It's just been a difficult position to evaluate for him, I think. And he really likes to use day 3 to build other core special teams and depth spots. But the past couple of years, he started to cut more and more of those day 3 picks. They just haven't ended up making the roster. And so if you're kind of in that spot anyway, where, like you mentioned, they have so many of these roster spots filled from these past drafts and these trades down, it may not be a bad idea to spend your 7th round pick on a guy who can at worst come in and be that competition for Spencer Schrader. And if you end up cutting the 7th round kicker because Schrader answers the challenge and he looks the way that you want him to look, I mean, that's not anything worse than last year when they cut basically every day 3 pick that they made. So yeah, it wouldn't shock me if they do that. I don't think they're going to just give the job to Spencer Schrader, because as intrigued as they are by him, it would go against everything they've said about competition on this team to just hand a job to someone who's as unproven as he is. So I think we'll see a competition this summer.
Nate Atkins, again, Indianapolis Star, all things Indianapolis Colts coverage. Our guest, I'm Greg Rakestraw, in for JMV, listening to 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. So, Nate, how well do you know the incoming tight end class at this point, given that is such an obvious need for this football team?
Funny you say that. I was actually just watching more Tyler Warren tape right before this. So I am diving more and more into these guys. Of course, Tyler Warren's been, he's been the most linked guy to them since, probably the very first mock draft that was written by anybody for this class. It's just such a natural fit. So certainly I'm more familiar with the guys at the top. He and Colson Loveland from Michigan are the two that are the first round options. And then, you get into the second round, and Elijah Arroyo out of Miami is sort of an athletic option, but he has an injury history, which is why I don't know that he's as much as great of a connection for the Colts. And then Mason Taylor's the one out of LSU that I think is a really good fit. Jason Taylor's kid, who I think is less proven as a receiver than those guys in the first round, but has a lot of talent to be both a blocker and a receiver, because that's what they're saying that they really feel like they want, is they want to get out of the just totally specialized bodies that they've run into by hodgepodging this position in recent years. You think about, we just talked about Mallory Cox. He's a blocker, but that's it. They drafted Will Mallory in the 5th round. He was going to be a receiver, but he's like a split out receiver type. That's not an inline blocker. They want that blocker who can catch for a couple different reasons. One of them is that they need to get Shane Steichen in a place where he can really have a multiple offense, where he can dictate the personnel that he's going to face, the coverages he's going to face. He loves when he can get teams playing man coverage with his route concepts, and he loves when he can kind of zig while you zag, when you have either nickel in and he can go heavy personnel or base personnel on defense, and he can kind of attack you through the slot. They had no ability to do that last year. Partly, a lot of limitations. Partly they're just the drop back passing game they had, obviously, but also just the tight ends, they had never allowed them to really do that. And so that's one of the reasons. And the other one is just that Josh Downs is such a steady presence at slot receiver, a guy they want to play a ton and live in 11 personnel, since he can block pretty well from the slot too. And so some of these tight ends who are a little bit more of the Kylan Granson style of kind of split out, never inline guys, I don't think they fit them as well as these inline guys. That's why I think Tyler Warren is a much better option for them in the first round than Colston Loveland, who can block a little bit but is more of your kind of split out tight end. But it's going to, that makes him harder to get. Tyler Warren right now, you're seeing in mock drafts go as high as, number 5 to the Jaguars. Right. I see him a lot to 7 to the Jets or 10 to the Bears. I think they're going to need to move up to get him. If he goes in the top 7, I think that's going to be too rich for them. But if he gets down to just ahead of the Bears, I would not be surprised at all if they trade up and draft him, because they put this position out for a while. But the way that they've talked this spring is that they know they need to go after it, not only to make their offense more multiple and all the stuff we talked about, but because they have to get this passing game going. They have to get Anthony Richardson going. They have to get targets in the middle of the field, answers to zone coverage that teams throw at them all the time. The tight end is going to be the answer to that. It's really hard when you have to go to the draft for your top tight end with how kind of slow developing that position is. That's why a guy like Tyler Warren could be that rare tight end that is worth trading up for when he checks as many boxes as he does for this team.
Are we really oversimplifying this to say, listen, in some combination, the Colts are taking a tight end first and a linebacker second? Treat that like an exacta box. You can go either direction, to use the horse racing analogy. Is that oversimplifying the board a little bit here, Nate?
I think it's pretty fair to say. I think there is one other sort of pivot in there, and that's what they decided to do at right guard. They made it clear when they were talking in the owners' meetings for the reporters that went down there, including Joel Erickson went down there for us, that they look at right guard as a real need, and they never considered moving Braden Smith in there. They loved what Will Fries brought them. They know Tanner Bertolini going to need a little bit of support as a young player playing the center position, and they need a firm pocket for whoever ends up playing quarterback. And so that's a position that it's, you can get a little bit more value. You could wait a little bit, but they could decide to get a difference maker there because they just had one in Will Fries, and their offense was, quite a bit better when he was out there than when they had to kind of piece it together with some other bodies. So I don't know if that means, that's where I think if they don't get one of those tight ends in the first round, I could see a trade back, and then a guard like Tyler Booker out of Alabama is a good fit for them. If they trade back, that means either, tight end in the second round, it probably needs to come by the second round, or what I could also see happening is if they trade back and acquire a pretty decent extra pick, maybe they look to trade with, a team like the Eagles or the Raiders for Dallas Goedert or Michael Mayer and answer the tight end that way. So either way, between the first 3 picks, I think, are going to be those 3 positions, tight end, guard, and linebacker, unless, of course, like I said, they end up picking up the tight end in a trade, then maybe there's something else. But linebacker for sure, I think that has to happen by day 2, round 3 at the very latest, because if you look at, Chris Ballard is good at drafting that position, his defenses have been a lot better when they've had a cover linebacker on day 2, like Shaquille Leonard or Bobby Okereke, than when they had to rely on it on day 3 with EJ Speed. And, Lou Anarumo's defense needs it badly. So it's a good linebacker class. I really do expect that to be, at worst, the 3rd round pick, but second round looks like a good spot for that too.
The likelihood the Colts draft a quarterback in 2 weeks is what? And at what pick does that start to get on your radar, Nate?
I think it's quite likely they're going to draft one. When they do it, I think that needs to be a day 3 pick, just because they've got the first 2 spots in the depth chart already pretty much locked in, unless they were to get into a situation where they just have to move on from one and trade him. I just don't think that's going to happen. If Anthony Richardson, they need him to win this battle, and then they need, if that's what happens, they need a backup to a player who misses time like he does. But they do have an opening for the 3rd spot with Sam Ehlinger gone, and they also have a need to sort of develop a player to be the backup next year, because Daniel Jones on a 1-year deal, and there isn't a world where this Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson thing's going to go more than a year.
Right.
Like this, they're going to battle it out. One of them's going to win, the other's going to be a backup, and then the next year, one of them's going to go somewhere, or maybe both of them somewhere. But that's where the draft is a good place to sort of develop that backup. And if you look at this draft class, it's not a great overall quarterback class. If you're looking for a starter, that especially a dynamic one, it's not the year to want to do that, but it has a lot of good backup type options, I think. Guys like Will Howard out of Ohio State, Kyle McCord out of Syracuse, Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon, Riley Leonard out of Notre Dame. even Curtis Rourke out of Indiana, though he's coming off the ACL surgery. So if you look at it that way, if you want a backup who can kind of learn the system and develop into, from third string to second string, there's a lot of guys to like. I just think that needs to be, sort of fifth round or later, even later than the fourth round. I think it could do it there if there's one they just like a lot better than the others, but they just have enough key positions they need to answer. Running back's the other one that we hadn't mentioned yet. I think should happen by round 4. That I think fifth round is a really nice spot to try and do this.
As always, thanks for the time, my friend. I'll see you out in practices, press conference center soon. Thanks, Nate.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You got it, Nate Atkins. Again, he and Joel A. Erickson do a phenomenal job. And Joel got his flowers earlier this week, as he so richly deserves, for the job that he did in telling Braden Smith's story and the story of his wife and what they went through last year, which obviously is far bigger than football. Joel is getting some family time this weekend, and I did not want to disturb him. So thank you, Nate, for kind of coming on board. We reached out to Nate about 90 minutes ago, and he was great. So, A, James, thanks for doing that. And B, secondarily, thank you, Nate, for taking the time late on a Friday afternoon. We'll take this quick time out. We'll update you what's going on at Augusta. And there was one piece of information about a former Colt I don't have time to get to with Nate. We'll share that with you when we come back. It's The Ride without JMV, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
What the hell's in there? But it's weird and pissed off, whatever it is.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
You know, when we had Blink 182 tickets, we played Blink 182. We have volleyball tickets. Maybe we should play like that song from Top Gun that was playing in the background. Those guys were playing sand volleyball. Or if there was a female equivalent, we would play that instead, since, just a couple of dudes in here on the show right now. I mean, I lost my man card for bringing up that scene from Top Gun. Anyway, call the number 4 right now at 317-239-1070. We'll get not just 4 tickets. Not that there is a bad seat in the Fishers Event Center, but 4 premium sideline seats. Am I saying that correctly? All right, good. I don't know. We always try to under-promise and over-deliver. But 4 tickets to watch tomorrow night's showdown against the evil Grand Rapids Rise. I'm not sure this league has been around long enough to say anybody is evil. My buddy Roosevelt Colvin's daughter, I think, plays for the team in Grand Rapids, so I was kidding about the evil part. I'm sure they're fine people. We want to see them go down in flames in 3 sets against the Indy Ignite. So caller number 4. 317-239-1070. We'll get a 4-pack of tickets to see the Indy Ignite in action. By the way, the Indy Ignite schedule goes through Saturday, May 3rd. Last home game will be Thursday, May 1st, where you can see the action in the PVF, of which the Indy Ignite are in their first season as a member. Congratulations to what's your name that just won the tickets. In terms of the leaderboard at Augusta, unfortunately, Scotty Scheffler is going in the wrong direction. He is back to where he started today at 4 under par. Not terrible, but he has bogeyed 10. He has bogeyed 11, and his tee shot at 12 was bogus. Now, it's not short of the green, which, of course, is water at 12, but it was back in the shrubs and then kind of rolled back down the hill. So at best, he's looking at a par. He could easily be bogeying a 3rd consecutive hole. Again, the leaders are largely in the clubhouse: Rose, DeChambeau, and McIlroy. And yes, if you're just getting your car and you haven't seen the Masters scoreboard today, after finishing at a level par 72 with 2 bogeys in his last 4 holes, Rory McIlroy a bogey-free 66 and a second 9 at 5 under par, including an eagle on 13 for Rory McIlroy on that par 5 today. The other thing I wanted to make sure I got to, we're going to talk Pacers in the next segment of the show. There seemingly are more jobs available these days in college football. Andrew Luck is the general manager of the Stanford football program. Frank Reich now is the interim head coach. Another former Colt has a new job in college football. Dwight Freeney's going to have less time to work on his golf game these days. He is going back to his alma mater. Dwight Freeney is going to work in player development at Syracuse. It's amazing, or maybe not amazing at all. Maybe it's what I should have seen coming 20, 25 years ago. A lot of those great Colts are now in coaching these days. Obviously, we see Reggie Wayne here, but Dwight Freeney heading back to Syracuse to work in player development. We'll take this quick timeout. Pacers, we'll talk about them next. Just how important, if at all, is tonight's game against the Orlando Magic? Scott Agnes, Fieldhouse Files, joins us next. It's The Rye without JMV. Greg Rakestraw filling in. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
waiting.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Of course, Caddyshack would be the opposite golf movie of the one you'd be watching this weekend. But you can enjoy both. It is perfectly fine. How enjoyable the Pacers games will be tonight and Sunday, we'll see. How important they are would be up for debate as well. The importance really kicks in next weekend. The Pacers know they are no worse than 4. Yes, they can get to 3. Is that a thing they should care about? Let's ask the expert, shall we? It is Scott Agnes of Fieldhouse Files who joins us now. Hello, Scotty. How we doing?
Hey, Ray. Good to be on with you as usual.
Man, your cell phone sounds phenomenal. It's like you're in the room right here next to me, dude. That's amazing.
I'm not. I'm looking at you right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm much better looking when you call the phone. But
there you go.
But Mr. Fancy Pants using the technology to make it sound like he is in studio with us. So, first question to you: do the Pacers care if they're the 3 seed or the 4 seed, Scotty?
It's one of those where you're probably the 4 seed. I think the percentages are 97% at least. What you're looking for here is if the Knicks lose here, or a Knicks win or a Pacers loss allows for the Knicks to clinch the 3 seed.
Yeah.
So you have 2 games left. It's more than likely the scenarios will play out where the Pacers are the 4 seed, which right now have them playing the Bucks. If they were the 3 seed, you're looking at the first round matchup being the Pistons. Although I will say, I mean, while the Bucks have won more than the Pistons here lately, they're without Damian Lillard. It's a group that's kind of, to me, almost at that expiration date. Whereas the Pistons, in many ways, remind you of the Pacers last season. Hadn't experienced the playoffs, that have some rising stars, that have some players that aren't well known just yet. But if we're being realistic, Rake, the key question, if you're asking 3 or 4, it goes, who do you want to play in that second round? If you're the 4th seed, it's the Cavaliers. If you're the 3 seed, it's the Boston Celtics.
And it sounds, by the way you set that up, you're of my opinion, I'd rather see the Cavaliers and the Celtics in round number 2. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, I would agree with you. Although, I mean, as I think Pacer fans saw last game, this Cavaliers team isn't top heavy. They have a lot of depth. They have a lot of experience. They have star power. They hung in there with the Pacers last night, despite sitting 4 guys because they have already locked up that number 1 seed. They've barely lost at home, so they're dominant on their home floor. So it's a tough route either way. With the Celtics, you have more dominant players at the top, and one of the big things I look for in the playoffs is who has the better players, and generally it leans towards the wings. Well, what do the Celtics have? They have exactly that with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and others.
Well, it's not me bagging on the Cavaliers. They're a great story. And again, I said this earlier in the show, if the Pacers don't make the NBA Finals, which I think it's a long shot that they would, Pacers don't make it. I'm rooting like hell for Cleveland and Oklahoma City. I want to see the young teams. I want to see the mid-market teams. I want to see the Midwestern teams do as best they can. But in the interest of your own self-preservation, who would I rather play in the next round? It's the Cavaliers over the Celtics, just because the Cavs don't have that great postseason experience, Scott, just yet.
Yeah, I think that's really the thing you lean on there. Although I will say they made probably the best move at the trade deadline, I think, in going and getting DeAndre Hunter, a wing who wins in the playoffs, to help bolster what they could potentially do here coming up in the postseason. So either way, it's going to be a difficult route. More of these teams are healthier than last season. That certainly aided in the Pacers' chances. But guess what? The Pacers are healthy too, with Halliburton being in there and being more close to full strength. And on the other side, Benedict Mathurin, he was not available at this time of year. He's playing some really good basketball right now.
All right, so with that, first of all, anybody planned to sit tonight's game being the second half of a back-to-back?
Yes, this is going to be a battle of second units, Greg. Both teams really sitting out a ton of players. For the Pacers, it's the entire starting lineup, and then Ben Shepherd is doubtful. So this is one of those where I can't blame teams at all, right? During the middle of the season, it's frustrating. It's like if you paid for season tickets, if you spent your hard-earned money for seats, I expect everybody to play. Now, that said, you've gotten to a point here where you've clinched a top 4 spot. You've clinched a playoff seeding. Now you need to prioritize whatever this team needs in the playoffs, and I agree with it. I want to see Siakam and Halliburton in Nemhard, really, in particular, get some time off. Now, the positive, too, becomes after Sunday's regular season finale in Cleveland, Rake, is they'll have a week off because of the play-in game that was established several years ago. So all those teams will get a week off. Now, for Orlando, no Boncaro, no KCP, no Wendell Carter Jr., Jalen Suggs, Franz, or Mo Wagner. So it'll be an interesting game here tonight just because of the unusualness, not just for one team, but for both.
This is the Orlando summer review from the old days is what this is going to be in terms of these teams playing each other. To me, the big question is, James Johnson has played in 12 games all season, averaging 3.1 minutes a game. How many minutes is James going to get in tonight's contest, Scott?
I'll put it at about 8.
That's what he's good for at this point? You can get 8?
No, it's more, hey, look, I want to see the two-way guys.
Sure.
I want to see the guys that can help you towards the future. So I think James might be needed, and he may want to get out there and get some reps. But at the same time, I mean, I'm looking at Quentin Jackson, excited to see what he can do, probably backing up T.J. McConnell at the point guard spot, for example. And Tony Bradley needs these valuable reps as the third-string big. Tonight, he becomes the backup. Much like you're treating it and giving the guys, the players talk about their vitamins, whatever you need in an off day. The starting lineup, their vitamins today is a day off, being on the second night of a back-to-back too, by the way. The vitamins for that second unit and beyond, it's getting that game reps, getting that game flow a little bit, because you don't know how often it'll come in the playoffs when rotations are usually 10 at max.
Is this going to be rinse and repeat for Sunday, or because you know you have – at minimum 5 or 6 days before your next game, do the starters then feel the need to come back for the Sunday afternoon game?
Yeah, I think it'll be a situation where the coaching staff kind of feels out where the players are at. I doubt they've made that determination perhaps just yet. Now, a lot to go into this. Back in August, Rake, you thought these final 3 games, well, you got Orlando, who could be in the playoff picture. Well, they are. And then 2 of the top final 3 games against Cleveland, they could be playing for the playoff spots. Now, it did not turn out that way.
Sure.
And so we're also seeing Cleveland sit guys. So I think that perhaps could also dictate how the Pacers handle Sunday. I don't know how much the meaning of the nice round number of 50 wins is, but I do know it's something a lot of people call attention to at the end of a season on coaches and players' resumes and that type of thing. So if they could get tonight or maybe Sunday at least, you win one, you get the 50 wins, I think you're feeling good and restful going into the postseason.
Scott Agnes, Fieldhouse Files, our guest, joins us on the very clear to listen to Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. My name is Greg Rakestraw. It's The Ride Without JMV here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. I said, all right, listen, we will go full bore into a playoff matchup. We'll know, obviously, as of Sunday evening, but we'll start really cranking in on that, say, Wednesday or Thursday of next week. We can kind of fast forward to what the discussion is going to be like after the playoffs are over, and I did that about an hour ago. Not as many questions to answer in the offseason, but obviously there are 2. Miles Turner, is he back or not? And secondarily, how do you get more minutes for Jarris Walker? So let's now talk about this one at a time. The likelihood of Miles Turner being here next year is what, Scott?
I'd say it's very high for several reasons. For one, they have no depth at center right now.
None.
So it is a liability right now. Now, you don't know what Isaiah Jackson will look like as well. He's going to be a free agent coming off the injury. You hate that for him, but it also may make him more of a value player to be able to re-sign him because he's coming off a significant injury going into his 5th year of his contract. But even then, can you count on him as a starter? Probably not yet, especially because of that injury. The other thing is, this is not going to be, I think, a very active free agent market. Now, there will be trades, but a free agent market and teams able to spend on other players, I just don't see it being very robust, Rake. I don't. I think you're looking at a couple teams having the potential to spend. San Antonio and Brooklyn is who I'm talking about. And so realistically, the one thing that is in the Pacers' favor here is they have his bird rights, which means they can go over the cap, which they certainly are, to re-sign one of their own. Now, that said, unless they make some outgoing trades, unless Miles is wanting to take a hefty pay cut, and I'm talking like to get paid half of what he is of his $20 million right now, which isn't happening. They're going to have to go into the luxury tax and or make some trades to clear up cap space. So that's how the front office led by Ted Wu and his salary cap manipulations will have to operate this summer.
All right, so with that, now let me give a follow-up. I didn't bring up his name, but he's the backup now. He's been really good as the backup. I'd like to see him continue as the backup. What's the likelihood that Thomas Bryant is back with his team next year?
I'd probably put that at a 40-60.
Okay.
I think best case scenario is you're able to bring back your original top two in Miles and Isaiah Jackson. Maybe you can bring back Tony Bradley as your third string center once again. Or excuse me, to bring back Thomas Bryant as a third string center on a minimum deal. I think that'd be sweet, and maybe it'd be something he'd be interested in as well, because he didn't have a huge market previously. That's why he's on such a affordable contract. So it might be a situation that he liked it here, likes the trajectory of this team being a now commonplace playoff team once again. But I'd put it slightly below 50% given what they have in front of him.
All right, Scott Agnes, Fieldhouse Fouls, our guest. Greg Rakestraw filling in for JMV, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. So that's question A. Question B, we have liked the progression we have seen from Jarris Walker, no doubt about it. Everybody says, you know what, we got to get this guy more minutes.
Yeah.
At whose expense do those minutes come from in the 25-26 season?
Yeah, that's the tough one, right? Just because, especially with more minutes, we've seen more production really over the last couple of months from Jarris, too. It's not that he has not earned more minutes. It's exactly to your point is, okay, who are you taking those minutes from?
Right.
As of late, it's probably been Shepard for one, who's the guy within his own draft class. Realistically, this is where you might try to sell high. Not saying they should or will, but do you sell high on Obi Toppin? Or, could you slide him into that 4 spot? The challenge for Jarris this whole time was they went from having 0 power forwards to now 3. And because he was drafted, then you acquired Obi Toppin, then you acquired Pascal Siakam. So it's really become a numbers game, and he has the least experience and all that. But I love his prototype. That's what they have needed. They've needed those 6'7", 6'8" wings that can play defense, can stretch the floor. I think one of the best things for him defensively and to add to his three-point shot was playing in the G League happily last year and adapting there. But I think realistically, moving to next year, Rake, I think it's got to be probably moving on from a player or two, and what I'd call a consolidation trade to maybe get one piece back and open up some playing time for other players like Mathurin and like Jarris Walker.
I understand the concept of selling high, but damn it, I love Obi Toppin on this team. I do not want to see him go anyplace. I think the role he plays now is exactly what you need off the bench for this group.
Do not disagree whatsoever. Yeah, he fits in so well, doesn't he? Especially as he's been able to stretch his three-point shot, knock that down. He's gotten more comfortable, very comfortable, obviously, inside the lane, being able to finish anything that's kind of put in his atmosphere. So as much of a good fit he is, at some point, though, you get a roster that's full, and you really need to consolidate it down. It's not a detriment about the player. It's more about the talent that this roster has and how to better spend within your money and financial purposes to make it fit within the luxury tax as well. Because here's what I think, Greg. I think ideally the Pacers make it work so they're not in the luxury tax next year, but then plan to be in the luxury tax the next couple of years. Because once you're in it once, then the repeater tax, that stuff all really starts to add up. So if they can narrowly avoid it next year like they did this year, like this year they're within like $100,000 of it. Incredible job by the front office. If they can do that one more time, then be willing to spend, you have to. You look at the top teams in the league, every single one of them that's probably in that top 5 to win a championship is paying into the luxury tax. And so I think the Pacers will have to move that way in one more year.
Final thing, buddy, before we let you go, what makes April, May into June, what level of playoff run needs to happen where we call this Pacers season a success for this team?
Yeah, to me, it's absolutely win one series and compete in the second round. I think that would be a very successful one, and because I do not want to compare it to last year. I think that was just so many unique set of circumstances that they certainly overachieved and maximized what they could do in consideration for other teams dealing with injuries and such. They competed, though, against the Celtics despite being swept in the conference finals. So to me, it's handle your business in the first round, make things difficult, 6-7 games in that second round, even if you don't win. And certainly if you get to the conference finals, it's a successful season in my mind. I think they're going to get to 50 wins here, and that's right on the number probably we all expected coming off of last year as well.
All right, final thing before I let you go, what are you writing about?
Yeah, so one cool thing was I was down at IU a couple months ago. Aaron Neesmith was talking to a class about in terms of fashion. So he'll be walking in with an outfit today designed by a senior student at IU. It's a story I've done the last 3 years. This year it's Aaron Neesmith's time. Then we'll start looking ahead to both the WNBA draft and what this Fever season looks like. A lot of Caitlin Clark stuff. I was at the women's Final Four, but more so previewing what's ahead for this Pacers team in the postseason.
And I was going to say, when do you start going full bore on Fever, knowing the gargantuan amount of eyeballs you drew for your coverage last summer?
100%. I mean, I think it's been continuous, but I think you ramp it up in another week when you're a week out from training camp, a whole new front office, a whole new coaching staff, and 7 of 12 players will be new. So they're already, I think, the second best gambling odds to win it all. Obviously, that's a lean between a lot of people pouring in money on Caitlin and the Fever, but still, they are the it team in the WNBA. 41 of 44 games on national TV. That's going to be a fun ride led by Stephanie White.
Good stuff, as always, my friend. Thanks for the time. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you, Rick.
Scott Agnes, again, Fieldhouse Files. Again, and he is joining us on the very crystally clear sounding Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. All right, let's update you on what's going on at the Masters. Last time I referenced the leaderboard, I said Scotty Scheffler was like back in the bushes behind the 12th hole. He had bogeyed both 10 and 11. What makes him one of the best, if not the best golfer in the world, he chips in and gets birdie on that hole when he was looking at potential disaster. So he is playing 13. Kevin Connors is on 17. He is at 6 under par. Again, Justin Rose, it certainly appears, will have the sole possession of first, but he'll do so by probably a stroke going into tomorrow's day. Right now, it is kind of looking at, Stu, who is going to make the cut line. The cut line currently +2 and better gets you the weekend. +3 sends you home. Bernard Langer is now in the house at 3 over. Freddie Couples is playing the 17th at 3 over, if you're looking to see how the old dudes are doing. One thing that hit me in terms of when Scotty and I were having the conversation of playoff permutations possibilities, in terms of, do you want to see the Bucks or Pistons in round one? You want to see the Cavaliers, or do you want to see the Celtics in round two? And I'm sure this has been talked about in Detroit, but I'm not sure it gets talked about enough outside of it. The Pistons have been wandering the earth for the last 18 years. Finishing 6th in the East. This is their best finish in 17 years. The other stat to bring up, they have not won a playoff game in that same length of time. The Pistons have not finished better than 8th in any of those years. 3 times they have made the playoffs on the button as the number 8 seed. In 2009, they lost to the Cavs 4-zip. In 2016, they lost to the Cavs 4-zip. In 2019, they lost to the Bucks 4-0. In those 17 years, they finished above 500 one time. Once. 44-38, which is they're right now 44-36. So if they win once, best record in 17 years. The last 2 seasons, the Pistons won 31 games combined. Give me the number 6 seed. Now, I'm not saying, again, kind of my druthers, I think I'd probably rather see the Pistons in the opening round just because, again, I'm a big believer, and more so in the NBA than any other sport, about past postseason track record being huge. But just something to think about. I was thinking about storylines heading into the Eastern Conference playoffs. We'll take this quick timeout. When we come back, keep you updated what's going on at Augusta. But it's a pretty big weekend in the IndyCar ranks. And Nick Yeoman, as he always does, part of the IndyCar radio team there in Long Beach, and he will join us next. It is The Ride Without JMV, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
JMV.
Now you listen here. He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy. Now go away.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Without fail, there is always some Monty Python that sneaks in the show when I am sitting in for JMV. Thank you very much, James Adams, for your works on the 1 and 2s. Colts happy hour at 6 o'clock. Pacers pregame at 6:30. And again, just to confirm what Scott Agnes was talking about a few minutes ago, none of the Pacers starters will be playing. But then again, none of the Orlando Magic starters will be playing as well. Benedict Mathurin and Jarris Walker will both start. Ben Shepherd will also be sitting tonight. So again, this is going to be a game for the reserves, the guys on two-way contracts, maybe even some quality minutes for James Johnson. But again, the Magic in the exact same boat. Coverage begins at 6:30 this evening right here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Masters play continuing again. Cut line likely to be at 2 over par. Leaderboard really at the top has remained unchanged for, well, most of the time that we have been with you. Justin Rose at 8 under, Bryson DeChambeau at 7, Rory McIlroy at 6, Kevin Connors on the course playing 17 at 6 under par. Of course, on the course has a completely different meaning for this guy, as in the road course or streets or race course. One of the great voices of the NTT IndyCar Series. Nick Yeoman joins us now. First of all, let's let the secret out of the bag here. Are you Long Beaching it, or are you studio this weekend?
Long Beach will look a lot like Indianapolis this weekend for me, Greg. I'll be honest with you, but it is good to be with you. And man, can we just take a second to acknowledge how awesome this time of year is? I mean, we just put the finishing touches on a Final Four. You got the Masters going on, of course, IndyCars in Long Beach, a Pacers playoff run, and then, of course, we got a somewhat big race in the month of May just around the corner. So, my friend, it is good to join you, and I am fired up for the 50th running of the Long Beach Grand Prix this weekend.
All right, why is this easily the second biggest event on the IndyCar circuit behind the Indy 500?
You know, it's one of those things, Greg, where you really have to experience it in person for it to really make sense. It is a gigantic party, and there are a lot of really diehard Southern California race fans that I don't think get enough credit. But it's got the history, it's got the ambiance. You're right there on the water, and it's just got the prestige, the history. I mean, it's so hard to pull off these street course races. I mean, if you're a longtime IndyCar fan, you know that a lot of these things have come and gone after a couple years. So the fact that the Long Beach Grand Prix has had the staying power and that everyone treats it like the magnifying event that it is, it's been big. So everyone circles it on the calendar and everybody wants to win it.
Breaking news, Alex Palou is really good. How long can he keep this winning streak going? Because this is starting to get to F1 levels in terms of, hey, this guy might win several races in a row.
Greg, I think it has to be absolutely terrifying for everybody else inside the IndyCar paddock that came into the season thinking they had a chance to win the championship. The usual names, the Newgardens, Dixon, Will Power, Scott McLaughlin, Colton Herta, Pato O'Ward. I think they all came in thinking, all right, we got a shot. We reset the points for a brand new season. Maybe we'll knock off Alex Palou. And all he's done, Greg, is go out and really dominate, winning the first two races. So it is a terrifying thought that all these drivers have spotted Alex Palou, at least a 40-point advantage for most of them. Now, he hasn't won before at Long Beach. His stats aren't bad. I think all four runs that he's had at Long Beach, he's been within the top 10. But this has to be the weekend where everyone inside the paddock that thinks they have a shot at the championship has to put their focus on how do we stop Alex Palou, because it has been a dominant start to the season for that Spaniard.
Why has he been successful in the 10 car when seemingly a lot of other really good race car drivers haven't?
That's the amazing question. I think pairing him up with Barry Wanzer, who's been on the pit box for many, many years in the sport, has been very, very advantageous. And I think Alex deserves a lot of credit in his own right. I think when Chip Ganassi brought him to the team, he saw a little Scott Dixon in him and the fact that Alex Palou doesn't beat himself. I mean, you look at the stats and the championships that he has won over the last several years, there aren't a lot of DNFs, Greg. I mean, he's just consistently, even if he doesn't have a race-winning car, he'll end up fifth and score a lot of points. So it is that consistency that I think Chip Ganassi saw plucking him away from Dale Coyne Racing a handful of years ago. And boy, he looks every bit the next Scott Dixon in this sport. It's impressive, and it's special stuff that we're seeing right now.
By the way, Scott Dixon isn't going away yet. He finished second at St. Petersburg. He was 10th at Thermal. He is third in points, and Alex has a significant lead through two. Then it's what you'd expect through two races, all jumbled up behind him. So if Alex is clearly the guy that's happiest through two races, who should be next in terms of the, for lack of a better term, most happiest driver through two races this season?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a couple names that stand out. I look at Christian Lundgaard, who made the jump for Ray Hall Lindman Lanigan Racing in the offseason to join Arrow McLaren. He's been off to a good start. He sits fourth there in the championship points, a pair of top 10 finishes. Felix Rosenqvist is another guy who sits fifth in the standings, the Swedish driver for Meyer Shank Racing. He's off to a good start, sitting in the fifth position. So there are definitely some good stories. And then you look a little bit further down, and some of the guys that got to get busy, you look down to Will Power, who sits in the 14th spot in points. He's got to get going. Rallied at Thermal to a sixth-place finish, but obviously crashed on the opening lap at St. Petersburg. So I think Lundgaard and Rosenqvist are definitely, I wouldn't call them surprises, but the good stories early on, Greg, although it is very, very early, just two races in.
In one sense, you could say the focus is always on Indianapolis, for the IndyCar series. Is there something that feels different as you get closer to the month of May on a race-by-race basis?
Oh, I think so. I mean, the momentum builds. I mean, we all know you start those practice days leading into qualifying, and the momentum builds. And so I think it also has a lot to do with the weather changing, too. It starts to get a little bit nicer around Indianapolis. And I think people, especially, IndyCar fans within that 465 bubble, start to get the itch to get out to the racetrack. So, yeah, I think and having a marquee event like Long Beach, too, reminds you that IndyCar can put on some pretty big events. So this is usually the time of year, especially when the Pacers are good, you get a little racers and Pacers action. This is when the momentum certainly starts to build, Greg.
Again, Nick Yeoman, IndyCar Radio, joining us on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline again because of the Pacers game on Sunday. Go over to 93 WIBC where you hear Mark and Nick and Michael, everybody else involved with the IndyCar Radio Network again. That begins coverage at 4 o'clock. I think the green flag officially flies at 4:42. I think is the last scheduled start time I heard from the trackside guys coming up earlier this week. All right, let's go back 3 weeks. And again, no need to kind of rehash the race winner. We know who that is in Alex Palou. But a lot is made of Thermal, venue, event, etc. As a guy that has gone through it twice, what immediately comes to your mind when you think IndyCar Thermal Club?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why the optics of the event, with it being a little closed off to race fans. They did have some grandstands there, and it looks like there were maybe a few thousand folks in attendance. But, I think the bottom line, Greg, is you have to go where you're wanted in this day and age in motorsports. Now, listen, if there was an oval sitting out there like a Homestead or Phoenix that said, hey, we only want an IndyCar date and the only one we want is the one that Thermal has, well, then I think you can have the conversation. Sure. But I'm in the boat that more racing is better than bad racing. I thought the on-track action wasn't bad at Thermal, but I completely understand why fans could look at that race and see that it's closed off and it's more for a private community and it can leave a bit of a sour taste in their mouth. But I also got to applaud Thermal. They appear to be in the long run of wanting to build this thing up. They want to bring in more grandstands. So if this race does stay on the schedule, I think it's going only to get bigger and better. But I can completely understand where the fans come when they watch that race and say, wait a second, this doesn't look like all the other events. It certainly won't look like Long Beach this weekend. And sometimes that's a bit of a staggering thing to see.
And let's hope there is no 14-lap gap in terms of any sort of electrical issue like we had 3 weeks ago. How did that, if at all, affect the IndyCar radio broadcast?
Well, I mean, thankfully we were able to stay on air, which was great, but there was about a 14-lap segment there where Mark James and I were basically watching timing and scoring on my iPad in the booth. So we were watching marching dots. Thankfully, we were in the middle of a pit sequence, so we weren't able to lose all that much. And as we said, the battle up front was certainly Alex Palou on a different pit strategy. He runs those guys down. We weren't missing all that much, but boy, that's a pretty helpless feeling, and I have a feeling that we're not going to have those issues on the radio or TV side this weekend.
Extra extension cords have been packed to take care of things like that from a broadcast standpoint this week. Thanks for the time, my friend. I know I'll be seeing you in the month of May real soon. Thanks for the time and the insight today.
Greg, you're the best. Have a great weekend, my friend.
You got it. Nick Yeoman, IndyCar Radio Network again, WIBC, Sunday at 4. By the way, I am honored that I get to be a part of the public address staff at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Again, this year, you will get to hear me on Grand Prix weekend. You'll hear me on race day. Myself and Michael Young have the joy of being voices. 1, that's him. 2, that's me, that you hear when you walk into the track on race day. Bomb goes up. Michael starts talking. I think of something witty to say playing off of him. And that's what we do for 5 hours on race day morning. I know I will be involved to some degree here on The Fan in terms of what race weekend coverage will sound like in terms of the GP weekend, in terms of quals, and in terms of post-race coverage. I think I have now done the post-race show for 11 consecutive 500s. I look forward to making that one number 12. I will keep my fingers crossed that I don't have to go until about 10:40 at night this time around. But by God, if that's what is needed, we'll do it. Because, yeah, there was a lengthy gap between on-track activity last year. Still one hell of a day. And I always say when I think back to last year's race, that was a victory for logistics from Doug Bowles and company in terms of timing, planning, and getting it down to the screws as to when you get that race in. And it was a show of passion by the fans that make that race unlike any other sporting event that happens in the world. And I've been able to talk about a lot of kind of passion projects, filling in for John today, and talking about the time that I had the pleasure of spending at Augusta National 20 plus years ago, but how those images are seared into my brain from those 2 trips I made to Augusta National. Well, the image of all that'll be seared into my brain from last year probably will be the waves of water when it did rain coming between where I sit in the 3rd floor media center and the pagoda just across the way. But when I kind of go back outside as pre-race festivities are about to get started at about 3:15 or 3:30, and the place looked just as packed as it was at 11 a.m. That is what will always stick with me about last year's running of the Indianapolis 500. By the way, a congratulations to a voice and certainly a byline that is as linked with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway as maybe any other journalist, analyst, broadcaster in the history of the race. Kurt Cavan on Sunday was officially inducted into the Indiana Sports Writers and Sportscasters Association Hall of Fame. I know that this year will be the 39th 500 that Kurt has covered professionally. Congratulations, my friend, on a job well done and certainly an honor well earned. We'll come back and wrap it up next. We'll kind of recap the day. Something you want to talk about, feel free. 317-239-1070. We'll get you to 30 minutes of Colts and then Pacers basketball this evening on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Pay that man his money.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Have Blink-182 be more than the voice inside your head. Have a chance then to be the voices that you hear when you're at Ruoff Music Center. I just got like a Robert Redford, Jeremiah Johnson nod of acknowledgement as I weave the song lyrics into the tease right there. You know the gif I'm talking about, don't you? Unfortunately, there's no camera on James, just on me. For ladies, we're sorry about that, that are watching the program right now. Call the number 4 at 317-239-1070. That's telephone number to get 4 or get 2 tickets, a pair of tickets to see Blink-182 September the 18th at, I still call it Deer Creek, damn it, at the Ruoff Home Mortgage Music Center. 317-239-1070. And a pair of Blink-182 tickets are yours for September the 18th. All right, we have talked Masters throughout the course of the show, and I have incorrectly named Corey Connors as Kevin Connors multiple times because I know a Kevin Connors. So to the listener that called in to say that, you're right, I'm wrong, my bad. Sorry about that. I hope Kevin appreciated all those shout-outs I was inadvertently giving him during the course of the program. Again, the guys that are further atop the leaderboard all tended to play earlier in the day. Justin Rose, 8 under. Bryson DeChambeau, 7 under. Rory McIlroy, 6 under. Connors, whatever his first name is, Chuck Connors, whatever, is at 6 under. He is playing 18. Tyrrell Hatton is 6 under, playing 14. McCarty, Shane Lowry are in the house at 5 under. Jason Day is playing 15 at 5 under. Scotty Scheffler is at 14, and he is at 5 under. And that is the group, and that would be 9 strong that are within 3 shots of the lead. The other part of the story today has been Fred Couples, who is going to miss the cut at the age of 65, and Bernhard Langer, who just missed the cut at the age of 67. And this is going to be Bernhard's last go-around of the Masters. He first won the event 39 years ago. Won it a second time in the early 90s as well. And he did not, I think he missed the cut by a shot. Had about a 10-foot putt he needed to make the cut. Did not make it, and this is going to be his last go-around. So a nod to Bernhard Langer for a wonderful 4 decades of playing at Augusta, again, as he is playing the tournament in a competitive fashion for the last time. 317-239-1070 is the telephone number if you want to join the conversation. Tickets have been won, but if you want to have a yap for the last 5 or 6 minutes of the show, we can certainly do that. Hit me up on Twitter at Greg Rakestraw as well. As far as, because I get asked this a lot, when I'm not just filling in for John, but appearing on a show with John, appearing with the guys on the morning show, what's next for you? Well, believe it or not, what's next for me is actually a couple of days off. Doesn't happen very often this time of year, but I have an evening off. I have a full day off tomorrow. I am working on Sunday, the HBCA Southern Indiana All-Star Game. I'll have that one on ISC Sports Network. Girls game at 2, boys game at 3:30. I'll be sharing that broadcast with Rob Brown and Rob Moorhead because I've got a banquet at the Colts complex with the National Football Foundation to attend as of 5 o'clock on Sunday. So I'll get one game in Columbus and then, boom, skedaddle to the northwest side and go do the rubber chicken circuit. I'm sure the food will be phenomenal at the Colts complex coming up on Sunday evening. That's one of the more cool things I get to do. But this time of year, it is a chance to kind of catch up a bit and catch my breath. Although I got to say, it also gives me a chance to actually work out a little bit more. Now, you probably can't see it because I'm trying to wear like dark, slimming clothes as much as I can on camera, and frankly, I've got a long way to go. James, are you familiar with former major leaguer John Kruk?
I have heard the name, yes.
Okay. Now, you probably know him better since he retired at some point in time in the 90s, I do believe. Probably know him better from his work on ESPN as an analyst, Baseball Tonight, things of that nature. Well, John, A, was a phenomenal hitter, and B, was not the most in shape fella to ever play in Major League Baseball. And he has a line about himself that is one of my favorites. And that is, he never missed a game with a case of pulled fat. I would beg to differ. I played tennis last night and did so for a good 90 minutes. Wouldn't say I played. It was more of a clinic, drills. In other words, you're constantly going. There's not the typical break of the changeover, serve, return to serve, etc. In other words, even though I'm still playing on a regular basis, doing that is frankly far more strenuous, far more work. There's something on my right side. I may have literally pulled some fat at some point in time last night. There apparently is actually a muscle somewhere underneath here because it's been killing me all day. So poor James has seen me try to get up out of this chair like an old man during breaks, and literally my back will start to straighten about 6 steps in. I look like the case of going from Neanderthal to modern man, that timeline as I walk myself out of the studio. So now James will notice this as I get ready to go home here in 4 or 5 minutes, because it takes a little while to make sure that everything is functional to walk for the rest of the day. Thankfully, I can kind of kick it back a little bit over the course of the next day and a half or so. What's on the big plans for you this weekend?
This weekend, I'm just taking it easy. Just going to relax. Might watch a little bit of the Masters.
Yep.
May throw on the Pacers, depending on what's kind of going on. But really nothing. Just a relaxing weekend coming up for me.
And I assume that I said it correctly, that John took time off yesterday and today.
Yes.
So he can be back for the JMV takeover tomorrow night. Is that correct?
I believe he will be back for the takeover.
Because I'm pretty sure in the 5-ish year history of that show, I don't think he's missed a show. I think he had to do obviously he takes time off during the Christmas holiday. Mm-hmm. So he has almost like a teacher, a 4 or 5 week sabbatical that he takes from Thanksgiving weekend until New Year's Eve every year. So that's when he kind of gets his downtime. The dude doesn't travel or go anywhere at this point. He is always here. And I know he's moved a show he did Revelation or whatever they call it these days. Not that they're the Royals, not the Rebels. Down at Roncalli did their big fundraiser a couple of times. So he would do a Friday edition of the show, not a Saturday edition of the show. I don't think he's missed.
I think you're right on
a
that.
single episode. I mean, this is like a Cal Ripken streak that he has going at this point. 250-something consecutive shows. We should keep track of these things.
We really should.
Going forward. Well, anyway, thank you to everybody that was a part of the show today. Thanks to our great guests. We had 4 of them. Again, Will Hask talking all things Masters. And yes, the Masters will be likely the dominant sports thing that you would watch over the course of this weekend. We also had Nate Atkins on the show. Again, in case you missed it, Mo Alley-Cox re-signed by the Colts. That does not change their need to draft a tight end, and I would say likely with the number 1 pick. Will Tyler Warren be around at 14? I don't know. Will the Colts be willing to move up to a certain number of spots to get him? We'll see. Are there other options in the first round? Yes. Is Warren kind of like Brock Bowers was last year, the guy that is the obvious number 1 tight end and seemingly a perfect fit for this offense? Yeah, probably. But it clearly, and if you kind of read the mock drafts, and we are getting to that time of year where you are starting to almost memorize those mock drafts and to what they look like, it's going to be Warren or Jahad Campbell, the linebacker from Alabama. Those are the guys that seem to make the most sense for the Colts at pick number 14, and those are the 2 most obvious needs. I want to thank Scott Agnes of Fieldhouse Files. Pacers Magic at 6:30. To use a soccer terminology, it's a reserve game coming up tonight. No starters are playing for either side because both teams are playoff bound. And Nick Yeoman joined us on the IndyCar Radio Network. Long Beach, 4 o'clock, Sunday, sister station, 93 WIBC. John is back on Monday, and for that, there was much rejoicing. Enjoy your weekend. I'm going to do as much nothing as possible. Thanks for listening. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.